conversation for men and women in the trades. We are diving into the core tenets of what constitutes a strong and memorable brand and how to create an identity for contractors and home service businesses alike that really allow for honestly an engagement with the customer and also with the internal employees that make a lasting impact, that allows for retention, that allows for the customer at the end of the day not just to come back and work with you again. That's great, but to become your evangelist. And what I mean by evangelist is that they are actually going out on your behalf and being your marketer. That is the best and cheapest way of advertising there is. And so with what being a strong brand is, I just want to return to the definition we discussed yesterday on the Knowing Show. And I'm sorry, the Knowing Show is another show that I have on Foundation First in the Craft and Calling. We were talking about what is the definition of a strong brand, because before we can talk about how to build a strong brand, we need to talk about what it is to begin with. And so a strong brand is all about the expectation that's set for the experience, and then what happens in between the expected experience and the experience itself and everything that happens in between there. So a strong brand sets an emotional expectation. It's not just spouting words about what's going to be happening when we come in and replace the floor, come in and fix the drain, but it's allowing for an emotion to be established around not just the experience, but also around the organization. Harvard found that 95% of purchase decisions are made in the subconscious mind, which is where our emotions live. And so it is so important that we learn how to tap into the emotions of the customers. But the way we do that is by first leading with emotions, which comes to the first practice that we're going to be talking about tonight of how to effectively build on that principle of a strong brand. And the first practice is that you and I, owners and operators of every single business, need to go inward. We need to uncover, if we have yet to do so, what our values are and the core principles of our business. Because here's the thing, if we value thrilling and delighting a customer, and we really, really do, then that means that at every single touch point of the customer journey, we're asking, how are we thrilling them? How are we delighting them? Or maybe our commitment and value is communication. So then that means that we are doing everything possible. We actually are putting additional resources into communication. That means that maybe we have a custom call center. We're not outsourcing that. We're not rushing from job to job and answering the call while we're in the truck on the way to another job. Or worse yet, I had someone on and we were chatting and he was like, yeah, I used to be like literally cleaning the carpets and taking calls. That does not at all reflect the value of communication. Our values, if they're genuine, they're going to translate into real business practice, real ways of doing business. Y'all, one of my core values in our company is emotional intelligence. I have hired and fired both employees and clients based off of that. I've let go of 2 of our biggest clients because they were not aligned with us on emotional intelligence. One bad client can do way more harm than having one really, well, I mean, honestly, one bad client can just come in and completely disrupt the business, because if your one employee is dealing with a couple of clients or they're dealing with multiple homeowners and you've got one bad homeowner, man, they can really, really do some damage on your internal culture. And so it is so important that I'm doing a really good job of effectively having my values in place to protect my team and also protect the customer. Sometimes we're not a good fit. So us knowing what our values are serves as boundaries. And just to bring in a biblical principle here, yeah, one of my favorite Psalms is Psalm 16, verse 11. And it says, the boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. And y'all, that applies so much to business, so much to our everyday life, that when we allow boundaries to be put in place, that is the play place in which we operate. We can move about freely within the confines of those boundaries, and they serve as guardrails to keep us safe, to keep our employees safe, The more boundaries we have in place that are clearly outlined, that are clearly identified, rooted in a compelling why, rooted in the values of the business. Man, our values are to serve as guardrails. The more our team will have clarity, the more it will be obvious about who is with us and who's against us. A strong brand demarcates. They're not afraid of saying no, and they're not quick to always say yes. So a strong brand knows who they are, and that is so much so tied to what are your values. And when I say what are your values, I'm not talking about the slapping it on the wall that everyone sees once and then forgets and walks away. It is a continual repetition and going back to the core principles. My friend talks about the first principles. What are the first principles of every single business and every single aspect of life that are just immovable and unchangeable. And y'all, our values need to operate that way. They need to be fixed lines in the sand that continue to shape and serve as the boundary lines for and which we operate as a business for our employees and also for our customers and for ourselves. If there's a new product offering or service that we might incorporate, how does that align with who we are? Does that actually take us off course? Especially with the introduction of AI, well, if we really truly value people, how do we ensure that the people we're hiring are not affected in a way that would be damaging? And how do we ensure that we maintain a level of communication and commitment to those high ideals for relating with a customer and creating that thrilling experience that's only amplified? Even today, I had a conversation with a woman, and we were talking about using AI as a tool, not a crutch, and not using it as something that we hide behind, but rather something to further amplify. AI is not going to come in and fix something that's permanently broken at a molecular level. And so it is up to us as the business owners and operators to examine our values on a regular recurring basis, to continuously put them forward for our clients, for our employees, and remind them this is who we are. And then that's a demarcation in and of itself. And if they want to leave, it's kind of probably best that they do so now. Next, the next thing of in terms of how to kind of build that strong brand is to really consider, okay, now that we've got our values, how does that show up at every single point of the customer journey? And when I'm talking about customer journey, I'm talking about from the second they see you, from the ad to the website to the form to the text message they receive or the email they receive, the phone call they get, the voice message that is on your answering machine, the welcome script somebody speaks out when they pick up the phone to greet someone who's calling, all the way to, okay, the appointment's been set. Now that's a whole other phase. And so when we think about the customer journey, there's very much so different parts of the journey that, yes, maybe we're more in touch with the customer with this department than in the next. So then the question becomes, how well is my process and my actual experience systematized to the point that regardless of who is showing up to represent my company at either and any touch point in the journey, are they all trained to show up consistently for that one section of the business? So think of it as like the top of the journey. Man, they're just getting introduced to you. They hardly know you at all. Well, they'll probably be interacting with more digital forms of the website. So now we've got to analyze the digital forms, the digital representation, and then the call center, and then we move down to sales. And so the brand marketing sales whole piece is kind of that top funnel. And then we get to the middle of the funnel where they're really in the decision making phase. What's the process like for the invoicing? What's the process like for proposals to be sent? How quick, how long do they have to wait? What's the speed of delivery? What's the actual process like when somebody goes into their home for the appointment? I was sitting in the back of the room during a sales meeting training for a home service business where we were fractional chief marketing officer. And I was watching this, the regional director, and man, he used to be a salesman himself, this good looking guy, and he takes his backpack and he puts it over his shoulder and he's mimicking like walking into someone's house. And he's like, "Do you all keep your shoes on?" And then everybody had to answer him. He's like, "Do you put your backpack down?" Everyone had to answer. "What if they offer you a glass of water? What do you do?" And he walked through every single type of scenario these salesmen might encounter and trained them on how to engage with the homeowner, how to be respectful, how to treat that home like it was theirs. And so this again, it comes back to what's the value? Who do you want to be and who are you? And then training every single person on your team to act accordingly. Because here's the thing, if you spend all that time with your sales team teaching them how to show up, well, how does the production team reinforce what the sales team learned? Because the sales team is selling the company in a very specific way. But then what if production goes in and the fulfillment process is nothing like the sales process? Man, it's like this is there's such a disconnection here. It's like this is a completely different company. So, we need to be thinking about, yes, each stage of the customer journey, but we also need to be considering who internally is involved in each stage and how well are they all trained in congruency? Are our values the through line throughout every single one of these stages? Are they trained with a continuity that allows for our business to be consistently represented? Because y'all, that's all part of the experience. If our customers have a different experience at point A, a different experience at point B, a different experience at point C, the lack of congruency, it's destabilizing. And we all know what that's like to be in a relationship with a partner or a parent where, man, they show up different every day. And we do not want our customers to have that experience with us. So this second practice of implementing a strong brand is the analyzation of the stages of the customer journey and the people representing each one. Ultimately, all of that together amalgamates the experience that a customer is having. So then the question is, what's the experience? And how are your values driving the experience so that you stand out drastically, dramatically from everybody else? Because you don't want your only differentiator to be price point. Otherwise, it's a race to the bottom. And then third and finally, the next question in this around developing a strong brand is, how do you want your employees and your customers to feel? And the reason why emotion is so important is because oh man, are there so many choices, especially in today's job market. There's so much vying for their business and there's so much vying for their job placement. And so now it's almost like the employees market. They have, or I'm sorry, it's the jobs are so scarce. I was going in the opposite direction. Y'all, but the reality is the jobs are so scarce, and so there's an element coming in here where the employees want to be working at a place where, man, they're bought into the mission. But there is a sense of desperation there too. So I had to flip it there. There's a sense of desperation in the job market. And so you being the employer, man, how are you coming in and making it so that, man, when they come on board, you're like, "Hey, you're a part of our family. We've got you." There's a safety and a stability there so that you're leading so well that they feel so safe. And doesn't that increase retention? But it also increases their desire to give back to you because you're being such an incredible boss. So how do you want them to feel working with you? Do you want them to feel job security? Do you want them to feel safe? Do you want them to feel like, man, this is the best place to work? Because as it is more so, I said it was an employee's job market. It's more so an employer's job market. And now you actually have kind of your pick of the litter. So who do you want to work for you? How do you want them to feel? How do you want them to show up? Because the expectation you set for the environment is going to be the very one that attracts the people to you. So I just love Chick-fil-A as an example of this. You have a consistent experience based on the values, but then the people there are all of a very similar caliber. So the more you do a values driven setting of the expectation for the experience, the more that you'll attract a type of caliber of person. And then same thing for the customers. The more you are values driven and setting the expectation for the experience, man, you can price it what you want. And then you're going to get the right people paying for that. and pricing at what you want based on the quality of the experience that you're giving. And man, when you root it in your why, when you root it in your values of like, this is why we're pricing it the way that we are, because we value your home. We believe your home is the greatest asset. Rooted in why, rooted in your beliefs, rooted in a value that drives deeper and deeper than anybody else. And that's going to make you stand out. That is what constitutes a strong brand. Values, and the emotion associated with it. And so I'll be jumping on here tomorrow. We'll keep diving deeper into these core principles of the customer experience and customer journey. But with that, thank you all so much for joining. And I will see you tomorrow on our